My name is Ava, and for years I believed my life was predictable, even boring. I was a teacher, married to my loving husband, Ethan. We lived in a cozy apartment in the city. My routine rarely changed. Home, work, and the occasional weekend with friends. But everything changed on a rainy Thursday night. That evening, I stayed late at school grading papers. By the time I was done, the storm outside had grown fierce. Thunder roared, lightning lit up the streets, and rain poured down in sheets. My car sat alone in the dimly lit parking lot. I climbed in, shivering as the rain soaked through my coat. The drive home was slow and tense. Visibility was terrible, and the roads were nearly empty. As I turned onto a quiet street, my headlights flickered for a second, plunging me into darkness. When they came back on, I saw him. A man was standing on the side of the road, drenched and motionless. His face was obscured by a hood, but I could feel his eyes on me as I drove past. My stomach twisted with unease. But I told myself it was just my imagination. But then I glanced in my rearview mirror. He was gone. I tried to shake the feeling of being watched and focused on the road. A few minutes later, I reached my building's parking garage. As I turned off the engine, I thought I heard something. Faint breathing. I froze. Slowly, I turned my head. In the back seat, a man was sitting. My blood ran cold. It was him. The hooded figure from the road. His face was shadowed, but I could see his hands resting calmly on his knees. "Don't scream," he said softly. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My mind raced with panic. "I'm not here to hurt you," he continued. "I just need a place to hide. Please, don't call anyone." Against every instinct, I nodded. "Okay," I said. "But if you hurt me, I won't," he interrupted. He told me his name was Caleb and he was running from dangerous people. He said they wanted him dead because he'd uncovered something illegal. His words were desperate, his tone pleading. I didn't know whether to believe him, but I couldn't shake the fear in his eyes. I drove to a secluded spot near an abandoned lot, shaking the entire way. The man didn't speak again, and the silence was suffocating. When I finally parked, I turned to face him. "What now?" I demanded. "I'll leave," he said. "You'll never see me again. But thank you for this. You might have just saved my life." Before I could respond, headlights appeared in my rearview mirror. A black SUV rolled into the lot, its engine growling. Caleb tensed, his eyes darting around. "They found me," he whispered. The SUV stopped a few yards away. Two men in suits stepped out, scanning the area with flashlights. "Stay down," Caleb hissed. I ducked below the dashboard, my heart pounding so loudly I thought they'd hear it. The men circled my car, their footsteps echoing in the rain. "Come out, Caleb!" one of them shouted. "You can't run forever." I held my breath, praying they wouldn't look inside. After what felt like an eternity, they got back in the SUV and drove off. Caleb exhaled shakily. "I have to go before they come back," he said. I watched him disappear into the night, thinking that was the end. But it wasn't. 2 days later, I came home to find my apartment door slightly ajar. My heart sank. Inside, Ethan was sitting on the couch, his face pale. Standing across from him was Caleb. "What's going on?" I demanded. Caleb turned to me, his expression serious. "They found out about you, Ava." "Me?" I asked, confused. He explained that by helping him, I'd inadvertently gotten involved. The men knew my name, my job, my address. I was no longer just an innocent bystander. Ethan stood up, his hands shaking. "Ava, who is this guy? What did you do?" I tried to explain, but Caleb interrupted. "There's no time for that. We need to leave now." The next few hours were a blur. Caleb led us to a safe house, a rundown cabin in the woods. He told us everything. The men chasing him were part of a powerful criminal syndicate. He had evidence that could expose them, but they'd do anything to stop him. Ethan was furious, but his anger turned to fear when we heard a car approaching the cabin late that night. "Stay here," Caleb whispered, grabbing a weapon from his bag. Ethan and I crouched in the corner, holding our breath as footsteps approached the door. A loud crash shattered the silence, and chaos erupted. Gunshots rang out. Caleb fought off the attackers with a skill that stunned me. It was clear he wasn't just an ordinary man on the run. By the time it was over, the cabin was in shambles, but Caleb had saved us. The next morning, Caleb handed me a flash drive. "This is the evidence," he said. "Take it to the authorities." "I can't stay with you, it's too dangerous." I wanted to argue, but I knew he was right. Before he left, he looked at me with a mixture of gratitude and regret. "Thank you, Ava. You're braver than you realize." And just like that, he was gone. Ethan and I went to the police with the evidence. The syndicate was exposed, and arrests were made. But Caleb was never found. Sometimes I wonder what happened to him. Did he find peace? Or is he still running? All I know is that my life will never be the same. That rainy night, a stranger entered my world and turned it upside down. And even now, in the quiet moments, I can't help but glance over my shoulder, wondering if Caleb is still out there, watching, protecting me from the shadows.